So Rocky, over to you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Suzanne, can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
Excellent, excellent. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. I hope everyone is safe and doing well during these times. I'm really excited to give this presentation today. As Suzanne said, I'm Rocky Moore, the Regional Sales Manager for the Midwest for Automated Logic. Very proud to be giving this demonstration today from my home, so thank you for attending. So before we get into the web control system, one of the things I want to do is I want to talk about really the DNA of automated logic, which exists really from talking about the architecture to an extent. So when we get into the system, I'm going to talk about web control as a platform. We're going to look at it. It's a front-end system, right? It's a thin client, so it's a system. So what that means is it's going to exist on a server. And why that's important to you is that this means it doesn't require a specific device that we sell to you in order to utilize the system. And it also means that it's only limited by the size of the server that you choose for your system, which makes it a very scalable system, right? So as we talk about this, one of the things that lives in our DNA at Automated Logic is that we want to give you devices and we want to give you systems that are expandable, that are intuitive, and that give you the capabilities to get actionable insights in your system. But we want to do this in a way that allows this to be able to proliferate through any size system with the web control platform. Now you see here across on the other side, we do have other applications that we offer that are cloud-based applications, from energy reporting software into our IntelliVisor analytics suite, which gives you these actionable insights on the health of your building automation system that really helps on the service side. Today we are focusing on web control. Another thing to talk about here when we're talking about automated logic is our commitment to open protocols. We are a BACnet centric control platform, meaning we're talking open protocol that is spoken by a number of manufacturers, well into close to 1,000 on the BACnet vendor list. We're number 24 on the BACnet vendor list, which means we've been heavily involved with BACnet since the beginning. We're heavily involved with ASHRAE. We're part of their living lab. Web control is a centralized system used there, and we're also in there going in the new facility as part of their new infrastructure for their headquarters. So heavily involved there. All of our controllers carry the BTL mark, which is the BACnet testing laboratory mark, so we're tested to that standard. And we're also speaking a number of various protocols, from BACnet over IP to BACnet over MSTP, and of course BACnet over ArcNet. We have a number of communicating sensors and those type of things in our architecture, which we won't get into today, but there's a lot of different various integrations that we're doing and expansions to make a full-fledged building automation system have actionable insights right at your fingertips. One last thing to say about our DNA is ALC is not interested in getting into forcing upgrades or forcing an end user to have to do specific things. So we intentionally do not build in obsolescence to our products. So as we release products, we're very cognizant of attempting to communicate to previous revisions and previous variants of our control platform. That way we understand, that way we can give you a reasonable life cycle cost on your building. We understand that there's a life cycle cost to buildings and to infrastructure, and that eventually controllers will need to be replaced, but we're not interested in coming in and saying you have to rip and replace every single controller to gain the functionality of systems that we're building today. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to jump into the web control systems. Excuse me for a second here while I jump into my web browser. I'm going to go into full screen mode here for a second. Suzanne, I'd like to confirm that we can see Web Control City and it looks visible.
Yes, we sure can.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So what we're looking at here today is a simulated environment. So this is something we have built to showcase the web control system. It has been purposefully designed to give you an idea of what the system is capable of. There will be some things in here that are representative of custom graphics, but most of what you see here today in this demonstration is going to be native to the platform. I will mention places where things are custom graphics, right? For example, right now you're looking at Web Control City. This is a custom graphic designed specifically for this demonstration. The good news here is that when you're using a platform like this, what this means is you can customize it through graphical representations along with your solutions integrator, right? Along with your dealer who's working with you with an ALC system to develop what you want to see in the system. Again, we're back to this server-based platform, which means it's expandable, but also means it gives it a lot of customability in the system. So as we look at the system here, what we're looking at, we're going to spend a lot of time on what we call Holland Tower. I'm going to go down here to the map and give you a little bit of an idea of how we can go from just a single system to a very large multi-site system. We have a number of customers in things like multi-site retail or large customers that have swaths of buildings across an entire territory, across the entire globe that we're working with. We even do things like data centers, Department of Defense buildings. I mean, ALC pretty much is in every aspect of every building across the globe, right? We have every market vertical that you possibly can imagine. So, and when it comes to security and those type of things in the system, because we are heavily involved in things like, data centers and things like Department of Defense buildings, we have to be the utmost secure, otherwise we won't meet those standards. So you can always talk to one of your solution integrators about our security or about our standards. We have a number of white papers and information on that and how we go about moving with web control and other things. We're even in things like cruise ships, which is kind of interesting, right? We have systems where they're running the water systems in the cruise ships and providing ventilation and cooling and heating into different places. This is a custom graphic that we built, but I like showing it because it gives an idea of the scalability and the versatility of the system. I mean, really, we can pretty much do anything related to building automation systems. So let's drive down into web control. It's very important to understand that, we're looking at a system where we do things in a parent-child relationship. So what that means is we take things and we link them in a manner where you can flow through the system. I'll talk a little bit more about the interface so you can understand how easy the interface is to access. But for right now, what we're going to do is just kind of move and show some examples of how we build things. So we do have a number of relationships with communication companies and with distribution companies. I'm going to use communication, and we're going to drill down into the map of the US here. Our factory is located in Kennesaw, Georgia, which is just outside of Atlanta. So that's for the purposes of this demo. One of the things we're showing here right off the bat, right, is that we have an alarm somewhere in the system. So you see how quickly we can see things are occurring across a large swath. This is, of course, a custom map of the United States that has been built for this. It's embedded in here. Drill down into Georgia, and you can see we have other sites. For demo purposes, we're going to go to Atlanta here. And then you can see we have WALC, which is the tower we're looking at. We work with a number of cell providers, specifically, cellular service providers. So here you can see a system, right? And as we drive down into the system and we look at this, we see this nice custom floor plan here, and we see a number of things happening. One of the things that's very important to point out is, I mean, this isn't really, your grandfather's building automation system anymore, right? In the past, we were just going to go look at HVAC points. We're going to look at temperature set points, some trends, those type of things. But for us, as we've moved forward in the building automation industry and been able to leverage, things like internet services, cloud services, edge services, solid state drives, those type of things, massive amount of storage, what we've gotten to is now pulling in data significantly to a centralized location. So you're not only looking at these split systems here, you're getting an idea of what's going on with grid power, and this is where our alarm is, right? We're looking at battery level, we're looking at the UPS, whether or not it's discharging or not. What mode are we in? We're in backup power mode, right? We're seeing something, we're looking at the zone temperature, but we're also see that, excuse me, we have this generator here, and then we're also looking at fuel level, right? So there's a number of data points here, tower signal, things that we can pull in the system because we become data agnostic, and that's the important point. Right, so long as we're talking those protocols, we're pulling those in, we can show you pretty much anything about your building automation system that you want to see. If I could give you an example, I went to a large data center that was part of a healthcare records provider that we do business with, and went and looked at their system. Is just a really amazing data center, right, with a lot of redundancy. They weren't only using the system to show specific things relative to power use efficiency and those type of things. They were also demoing their entire system with web control, showing their staging of generators, their backup generators, and a number of other variables associated with that system. Very powerful way to utilize your building control system to gain information, right? We're not necessarily driving commands to specific systems. We're not a life safety system, but we can kind of become that single pane of glass to pull all this data into a centralized location. So now I'm going to click on the generator, give it a second to load here, right? And to give you an idea, we're running data is being simulated in the background. I have a server running on my computer that's giving us this information, right? So it's not live data, but it is simulated data. So this gives you an idea of graphics. This is a canned graphic that can be utilized in our system. These are canned dashboards that can be manipulated in our system. Our dealers have access to these. You can move about the system and create these in different ways, in different forms through the tools that we give them. But as you can see here, we're looking at generator status. We're seeing what's happening specifically with oil temperature, coolant, operating mode, right? Voltage, amperage. These things are very important pieces of information that you may need in the system that you can gather directly from web control. As you noticed, I haven't even talked about HVAC yet, which I will here soon. But what I'm talking about here is purely data agnosticism, the ability to grab things, give you data that it gives you the capability to have actionable, to get actionable insights into your system that are going to create actions for you to do with your building automation system or in your building, right? Something I'll mention here because I just like mentioning it while we're looking at it. We have various add-ons, and I won't get into everything as associated, but this add-on is a weather add-on. It's native to the system when you have a web control system, 6.5 or greater. But also what we have is an hourly weather add-on. And I want to speak to this just for a second because I find it to be quite powerful. And the reason I find it to be quite powerful is because what you can do with weather data these days, as it's a stream that pulls into your server, right? We're grabbing this and we're grabbing it and putting it in a server, and it's going into our SQL database and it's getting all this information. And now you can control off of this information. Not only can you control off of this information, you can also do some predictive indexing off of this information. When we know what the weather patterns are going to be, and we know the weather changes day to day, but if we know what the weather is supposed to be tomorrow, in specific instances, we can decide how our building automation system reacts to that specific data. One of the other things that I've seen utilized is I've seen on a very large cooling site where they're using water from a lake to do a bunch of cooling for the city and also to do heat transfer into their drinking water system. They use web control to stage all of their systems along with our automated logic controllers and some of our plant control systems and chilled water system optimizer, those type of things. But they're utilizing that to actually look at, they're using web control to look at the weather data, do some calculations in the background and decide what the load is going to be across the board. And they also look at occupancy rates and those type of things. And then once they do that predictive indexing, they do a comparative analysis against that to see if their staging algorithms and the things that they've put in place are actually working as predicted. So it's a very interesting system. There's a lot of complex math in the background, but it's through these type of things that we can create these more efficient buildings, these more efficient systems, right? So I'm going to drop down to the tree here for a second. The reason I'm going to drop down to the tree is because this is, oftentimes you give a demonstration like this and you're clicking through graphics and people see this ability to have what we call that parent-child relationship, right? We're going top to bottom and moving around. But it's important to know that that's not the only way to navigate in this system, right? If I want to go anywhere in this system, there's a tree. I have the ability to do my settings. I have the ability to do some of the setup in here, right? But as I drop down, just to give you an idea, we're not going to go there, but if I drop down, I can see every floor in the tower that I'm going to look at. I can even get very, very granular drop down to each individual room, to the VFDs, right? Look at each individual point associated with that. So very, very important there to be able to navigate quickly. We also have what we call jump to functions, where anywhere I'm in the system, I can right click on something and it can take me to the associated logic or something like that, which I'll show you a little bit more about here in a second. Let me go back to Web Control City for a second. Just to talk about users and accessibility, I think it's important here just for a second make a note of how you enter operators. It's a very simple process. We have a secure system. Once this is in, if you're an administrator, you have the ability to build the associated access privileges with the system. You can, as you navigate through here, oftentimes you'll hear the question, well, what if I don't want someone to see this page or be able to change the data on this page? That is totally customizable in Web Control. We also have a number of 21 CFR 11 side of things which is really basically FDA regulation for the pharmaceutical and side of things, right, for storage and those type of things and record keeping. We even have the ability to go in and create change reason, which means when a user comes in, they have to enter a password. Of course, when you log into the system, you have to enter a password, but when they want to make a change in the system, they have to enter their password again, right, put their credentials in again, and then also enter a reason for the change. That gets hard-coded into the system and then into a report where you can push that report out and say, Bob Smith made this specific change, and this is the reason he input for that specific change, and then that's noted in the audit trail and then securely locked down there. So let's drive into the system a bit. If I'm looking here, just to give you an idea, when I'm going through these things, you're going to see up here, you're always going to see graphics, schedules. Sometimes you'll see property, you'll see alarms, trends, and reports. The reason these things are there, right, these different places, the reason they're there is so that you can see the data as associated with the system you're looking at. They're always related to the page that you're on, which is great because you can grab all of that data there and bring it into the and look at what's going on for that particular system. So let's look a little bit at the parent-child relationship and walk through this. I'm going to click on Holland Tower, right? And now what I'm seeing here is something that is originally, and I say originally, there are other people who are doing this now, but came out of automated logic. We've seen this replicated in various systems, even systems that aren't meant for HVAC, right? We've seen this replicated in like power control systems. But anyway, we utilize, this is called thermographic floor plans. What thermographic floor plans are a way for you to grab information with your eyes very quickly to see what's occurring. So let's talk about down here what we're looking at. We're looking at whether we're in an ideal space, right? We're looking if we're getting warm, warmer, or going into alarm, cool, cooler, or going into alarm. In this place also you have some active, inactive system information, and then whether or not you're in maintaining or maintenance, excuse me. So from this particular standpoint, what we're looking at here is the variable data, and I can see in each individual one of these floors very quickly if I'm in alarm. Up here, we'll talk a little bit about like our fire, lighting, and security integrations here as I move forward, but we can see quickly if something's an alarm, we're getting close. And the reason we want to look at it this way is we don't necessarily want to just drive into alarm. We want to relax this a bit so we can know that we're getting close to something before we go into ultimate failure, right? So I think that's a really, really important point. Okay, so this is loaded in the system. Now we're driving down to a floor. I went to floor 9, which is our demonstration utility area, right? So as I look at this, there are a number of various things you're going to see here. We're going to talk about that I'll drive into. But first, let's just talk about what we're seeing when we look at this particular instance, right? If I were just seeing the data, right? If I were just seeing the data, this is pretty much what I would see, right? And what we're looking at here are numbers, right? Is this the set point? Is this the temperature, right? Regardless, we see that there's something existing here that's related to temperature, but we don't have a concept for what's occurring, whether are we close to something or away from something. So what we want to do is take data and turn it into an actionable instance. And that's really what thermographic floor plans are for, right? Thermographic floor plans are to show you that. Now, just to mention here, you see that go purple for a second. The reason that's going purple for a second is it's going out and reaching out and grabbing the data. We want you to know whether or not you're getting live data. So when it's purple, it means there's not a data connection at that point. So if the system were to go down, you would see purple floors, those type of things, and understand that you're not getting data into the web control system. So these floor plans are something that come with any new project as people move, as our dealers onboard different projects. We actually develop the floor plans in concert with them, so they match the floor plans that are in your engineering and your designs, so you can actually have everything matched up specifically to your system. So certain things you can see here that are features, we can have automatic pop-ups where you can go in and look very quickly at what's going on with the system. We're not trending any data here for some reason, but you would have a trend here. You can see here, this is how we're in occupied mode. You can see this is the occupied set points, and these are the unoccupied set points, right? And then you can see we're heating and cooling mode. So very quickly, we can see where we are, we're in range, and then also we could move the slider if we wanted to, right? And I'm not going to, but move it to somewhere where we want it to go specifically to set that set point. We'd go up here, we would hit accept, and then we would move on. Another thing, this is something that's a custom function, right, that you would have to request, but we can also do ductwork layout over the system. You can see what's happening with the VAV boxes, which we're looking at here, right? You can see where the air handling unit is. If I were to click this, I'm not going to because I'm going to do it a different way. This would take us to the air handling unit associated with the zone and these variable air volume boxes. Now I can drive deeper into this. Well, before I drive deeper into the system, actually, let me speak to integration, because we're here. It's probably worth talking about before we move on to some of the other feature sets. So here you see we have a fire alarm, we have lighting, and we have security integrated here. I'm going to go to fire for a second and talk about integration. Obviously, we're a carrier company. There are a number of sister companies underneath the hood there, right, associated with Automated Logic. So we have a number of relationships there. I do encourage you, while I'm mentioning this, that we do have a Center for Intelligent Buildings. I'm just going to jump out of full screen mode here and just jump on that page just for a second to show you that you could go to the Center for Intelligent Buildings if you want to know more about it specifically. There's a lot of information where we've done a significant number of integrations where web control is centralized in the system. It's pulling all of these things together, bolting them together, and then basically doing some pretty amazing energy control routines and other things that create this to be a LEED Platinum facility, right? So I encourage you to go there and learn more. Reach out to any Automated Logic dealer. They can reach out to us. We can also schedule, when the timing's right, of course, visits to this building, those type of things. We can also do demonstrations of that particular utility that's the web control system running in that building. So from an integration standpoint, what we're looking at here is pulling in data. And oftentimes the question comes in when you're pulling in data about fire alarm systems, well, are you going to push data out? Are you going to make certain things happen? It's not building automation in this particular instance, outside of UUKL and smoke control. Building automation in this particular instance is not meant to call a fire department or do the routines associated with the fire control system, right, with the fire system. But what we can do is pull in information from that fire system. We can look and see that we're having an issue. We can see things like, oh, there's been a fire alarm pull. We can see there's a smoke detector going off. If we want to, we can drill down into that particular portion of the system, right, and see what's occurring there. We have basically some information related to that, right? We could see office number 12 is where we're in alarm. We can see tenant 3, something's going on there, and we're doing a test there. So there's some things relative to information we can pull in. It's very important to be able to do things like this, because as things become that, more integrated, we want to place one kind of stop shop we can go to get the information, but we always have to remember that specific systems are designed for specific things, and so therefore we need to focus on their core competencies and functionality and allow those systems to function as they are. So because of our commitment to open protocols, and because what we've seen in the lighting control industry, where the lighting control industry has really done a very good job in most places of catching up with the BACnet protocol, we can integrate to lighting control systems. We can look at on-off. In fact, our controllers are utilized in some places to do various amounts of lighting control, even going to the point of parking light control, things where you'd be controlling relays and switches and those type of things. When you get into scene selection and that type of stuff, that's generally done at the interface on the lighting control side. But just basic stuff here to give you an idea of a general graphic, right? To be able to turn on lights, to be able to turn off lights, and see the status of that pretty readily. Totally doable with us. We're pulling in sunrise and sunset. You can add schedules, right? Because we're doing BACnet scheduling. We can push those down to the lighting control system so that you can schedule your lights when to come on and come off, which is also huge for energy saving routines. Another thing that's very common in the lighting control industry with HVAC to see, and we can do this with our sensors that have occupancy on them, you can integrate these systems so they share the occupancy sensor. And what that means is your thermostat has an occupancy sensor on it that's used to throw that zone into occupied mode. Well, you can also turn on the lights with that occupancy sensor, right? So it saves you the cost of multiple occupancy sensors, those type of things. So as we integrate, that's how we do things. I won't really drive down into security. We have the ability to pull in some IP images. Some of the things like we're doing in Center for Intelligent Buildings, we're actually taking the security system there and looking to see where people have done scan badges, right? Or where a door is forced open. Those type of things, so we get that information pretty readily and pretty quickly. So now let's talk about basic, when we get into the HVAC applications, those type of things. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into environmental index for a second. Excuse me, I pushed the wrong one. One of our features that's unique to web control is the environmental index portion of the system, right? So we have the ability natively, this is a custom graphic here, these gauges are normal to our system, right? But we have the ability natively in the system to do environmental indexing, which is really giving your building a score on how it's performing relative to specific conditions that you set forth in your building. In this particular instance, we're talking about meeting set point, but we're also talking about meeting specific energy demands, right? You can do a lot of relaxing of set points and some other things native in the system relative to peak demand that will help you shed load specifically in a building. And you could also do some calculations to get an idea of how your building's performing against those metrics. One of the other things that we've done, right, in other instances, and you can look up the cognitive effects study. It was done in concert with, at the time, UTC, Carrier Automated Logic. We produced a report that talks about the effects of fresh air in buildings, those type of things. And so you could even be looking at that, parts per million of CO2, or how much fresh air is being put in the system, so you could understand if you're meeting these cognitive effect type of instances. Because what we found is obviously the more fresh air you have, the more awake people are, the better they can study, the quicker they heal, those type of things that are very important to building system. Because, you know, building systems obviously are about people. That's what we're about. People, we're about energy savings, we're about comfort, we're about safety. So backing out, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to now go back to this parent-child relationship we're talking about, and I'm looking at my zone, and now I want to go in and look at a VAV box specific to an area, right? Oh, I want to look at the conference room one. Well, here I am, and I'm looking at a VAV box. So this graphic is a standard graphic. You have various types of, you know, boxes, right? Some have reheat, some don't, those type of things. So you're going to have different boxes. In this particular case, this is a full-blown one, right? Shows our controller on it. And it has the information associated with what's happening here. What's our supply, damper position, those type of things. And it's giving us a great graphic to show what's occurring there. Now, something I'll mention about this system, which is really interesting, is that we have something called time-lapse graphics, and it's right here, unique to automated logic, where we can go in, and I'm not going to run it just because it needs to rebuild and stage the graphics, and it'll take some time, and I want to be cognizant of that because I have a lot of things I want to show before we get to questions. So, but looking at this, what this allows us to do is go back in time in our system. And what I mean by that's why I call it time lapse, right? What I mean by that, it's almost like a DVR for your building automation system. So if I were troubleshooting in my system, remember all this data is being dumped into a database, right? We talk about scalability of databases. I mean, I know of instances where the number of samples, right? The number of data points existing in the system is, you know, up to 1 billion. It's just insane how much information you can store across multiple servers, those type of things. But anyway, what you can do is go in here and redraw your building automation system in a specific slice of time, right? I want to go back, you know, to this date. I want to go back 2 days, right? I want to look over those 2 days to this particular point in time, and I want to look at it in 10-minute intervals, right? So I want to go back, you know, 24 hours, whatever that is, and I want to look at it in 10-minute intervals. So what this does is it redraws your graphics. You would sit there and be able to watch your data in 10-minute intervals. So you'd watch this actual VAV box do different things. You can stop it at a particular point when you see a problem occur, and then visually troubleshoot that problem by navigating in the system at that particular point in time. Very powerful. I've had customers who have had construction in their facilities, something changes out, they've had some wire cuts or something, they can't figure out where the comm issues are because there's been just kind of this you know, mess of construction going on. They come back in this system, run time lapse, watch specifically where these different communication errors are happening, and they can go to a specific point in time and say, that's when I lost comm to that controller. I know what was going on over there. They were changing out, you know, something specific, moving drywall or changing zones. So I'm going to go to that specific zone and look at that. And there's other ways to do it through trending and those type of things as well, but this is just another feature set that I'm mentioning here while we're on this page. So another thing we have is notes. It's interesting. You have the ability to come in and write notes in the system. When you write them in, it shows that it turns red and shows that there's something there. So when someone logs in, they can see what's occurring very quickly, just like a Post-it note, right? So see that maybe you turned off the system, or hey, you need to do an air filter change somewhere, so therefore you're putting on, hey, we're going to do maintenance tomorrow at 3 p.m. Just note, you know, something like that's occurring. So here we are in the system. I'm going to drive down now to the air handling unit. This is a custom, not a custom graphic. This is a native graphic in web control. Something that you would see in any new graphic instance, right? So if you're not running some of the legacy graphics and you're doing new systems, these things are going to be implemented in your system as you move forward. what you're seeing here is, of course, all the information again. There's wonderful little things that happen here, like these fans will run faster, when they're moving faster. You'll get a little bit of graphic, these damper positions are going to move. Those things you would expect to see, the wheel's going to turn, those type of things. But you're also getting a wide swath of information related to this particular unit and this, general ecosystem, if you want to call it that, right? And this information is powerful and it's great and it's wonderful and it's good to have. But then the other thing is because you're living in a server setting, right? We have the ability to do a number of things related to the system. I don't have to just look at this system as an air handling unit with those things. I can actually go in and take a schematic of the controller if I want to, and this is done custom, right? But this can be dropped into the system. This is a drawing that exists. It's not hard to do. Dropped in the system. This is our SE module, right? And we can look and see what's happening over each individual point of I/O as we move through the system. We can actually see what's occurring and what's happening and what those are related as a position of I/O on the controller. We can even, if we want to, look at the air handling unit schematic as it was drawn in the design documents, right? So we look here and see how this is brought out and also have the data as associated, right? We see the bill of materials, we can see what's occurring there, those type of things. I did the control module, sorry. If we want the sequence of operations divided in there, or we can have the sequence in there. So all of these things can be associated with this particular unit right there in the system so you can see it. There's no longer a need to run down to a panel and open it up and hope some paper falls out, right? And you can find it or find those type of things occurring in the system. So also, what you have the ability of doing, again, it's a server system. We could do a lot of various things. I can embed the documentation. Right in the server. So if I have a smart device or I'm looking at it from my laptop, I have the ability to go in and get the technical guide for these particular pieces of information, all the way down to the technical material for our controllers, right? Now, something else to mention here, we're talking about what you can get in the system, what's available in the system. Something I haven't mentioned yet, which I think is important to mention, is how we go about our model, right? So oftentimes we'll get questions about, licensing and those type of things, and what do I have access to? As the end user, you have access to everything, and for the cost of your web control system, right? So there's no annual licensing fee associated with this system. We're not going to come in and say, in order for you to have access to your logic or in order for you to have access to your system, you need to become a dealer or something like that, right? We give you the choice, we give you the freedom, and our dealers give you the freedom. And that's the idea. The idea is to hand you a system that is your system. If you want to self-perform on your system, you can be trained by your dealer to self-perform on your system. If you want to have a service contract, you can have a service contract. If you don't have to. So, those are the things. We understand that you are the customer. You're going to have varying needs depending on who you are and what your system is. And we like to keep it that way and like to show you what we have. So we say, we give you the keys to the castle. You can start the car yourself and drive it if you want, right? So this is the logic page. This is associated with that particular air handling unit. Very important to see here. We can do various things. There's, I talked about things like going in and doing jump to relative to things. I can go in and get help relative to specific functions. There's a wide, kind of a wide world of help in there, right? There's other things you can do. We have embedded training videos, those type of things in the system as well for various things, so you can see what's occurring there. All right, so I'm going to go back to graphics. Want to be cognizant of time. There's some other things I want to show you, so I won't spend too much more time on this, but I think it's very important to show you also things like, our capability to do trending. This would be an example, right, of a trend graph. We can do multiple different samples, multiple different points on a trend graph and do comparisons. These are the widgets basically that allow you to do things like zoom in, do look back periods, scale it, those type of things, right? You have the ability to download and save. Show you just kind of a help feature. When we talk about getting help, I just right clicked and went to help, and here's information. This type of things you see in the system, right? Here's where your status messages are. Here's how you can do this when you're in touch mode on a smart device. So you go in, we very, very quickly want to show you how you can operate in the system. We want this to be as intuitive as possible, natural for you to follow, and very easy to access. I think we've done a very good job. In fact, it's why it's made automated logic what it is today, is because part of it is because of this system right here. It's also because of our distribution model, those type of things. But this system has a big part in our success. In reporting, you can do report generation. I won't get into generating reports, but you can go in and just like this, you can download and save things as images, CSV data, PNG, JPEGs, PDF files, those type of things. All of that's there, rooted natively in the system. So now we're going to just run down to the chiller plant real quick, and then I'm going to deviate a little bit and show you some neat little features and some other things that we do. But this would be, again, an example of doing the parent-child relationship, getting into a chilled water system, driving down into the chiller that's associated with this particular air handling unit, getting the information, seeing the graphics, those type of things. And these are native graphics. So very beautiful graphics in my opinion, very powerful, second to none in my opinion, but just a really neat thing. So also now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run over here into dashboards. Okay, and as I run into dashboards, if you look across here, what we're seeing is various number of ways we can convey information. I'm not going to get into every single one of these. I'm going to talk about a couple of them, right? I'll talk about basically right now real quick, just without getting into the dashboards, about our plant control routines, our chilled water optimizer. We do have systems that have native logic and our automated logic controllers that are designed and geared for doing things like plant control algorithms, optimized start-stop routines, things that are meant for saving energy and driving the system. We have a controller called the chilled water system optimizer. That particular controller has native logic that does some routines that do some trimming and responding on the chilled water and condenser water set points on a chiller, which which end up affecting lift and specifically in the chiller. And what that does is it monitors the pumps and the fans and other things going on, looks at the energy being utilized, doesn't want to affect comfort, looks at what the demand is, and then makes that system react a little bit differently. So you're still getting the cooling that you want, but you're also reducing the energy associated with the system. So we have dashboards associated with that. We have various ways of giving that data, right? One thing I really do want to harp on is these type of graphics where we do these dashboardings to summarize things in the system. So imagine you have a number of air handling units in the system. You want to get an idea very quickly of what's occurring. We're not just looking at zones, we're looking at a wealth of information here, right? So just to kind of give you an idea of the data that we're seeing, we're in alarm here. We can see what's going on specifically. These are in cooling mode. We're looking at the data where it's saying what the fan speed is, CFM, static pressure, here's our problem, right? And supply temp, right? And then we're looking at VAV summaries. We're looking at whether or not we're in cooling mode, whether or not we're in heating mode, number of zones we're servicing, what's happening from a temperature standpoint, what's happening from a CFM standpoint, right? And now if I want to get that detail about those VAV boxes, it'll just take it just a second to load here. This graphic's going to come up, right? And now the information that we're getting is information specific to the air handling unit. It's specific to the VAV summary that we saw. And this may be a little disparate from what you saw before, but again, we're generating data here. It's not a live system. So if you see a couple things that are different, there's a reason for that. And I'll throw some color into this. That's why we have these bars here, maybe throw into a different mode, right? But as you can see here, what we're looking at are the VAV boxes. Naming conventions, visualization of damper position, percentage as damper position. We're looking at CFM as a percent of max, right? The CFM is actual, cooling set point, heating set point, where we are relative, getting a little bit of that thermographic floor plan data, right? So we've got that, we're getting a little warm over here. What's our heating set point? Are we in cool? Are we in heat? Are we in reheat? Then also environmental indexing, which we talked about before, supply temp, zone temp. So a lot of information in one single space. This is a dashboard that is native to web control and can be manipulated for your system by your integrator. So one other thing as we are getting close to time, and I want to be able to take some time to field questions and maybe navigate the system if it's required, is I want to talk about a couple of things. One, we're not going to be able to show in this particular demonstration, but the first one I want to talk about is fault detection and diagnostics. We are heavily involved in ASHRAE Guideline 36. Maybe some of you have attended our presentations by Kim Gilbert on ASHRAE, Guideline 36. We're doing a number of different algorithms and routines associated with the high performance sequence of operations. It's very important, right? But also something we're doing that's kind of a part of that recommendation, that guideline, is fault detection and diagnostics, right? So we have the ability natively in our controllers to enable what's called fault detection and diagnostics, and what that is going out looking for faults in the system based on a number of variables, right? Taking those variables, putting them together, doing some rationalization and saying, okay, you have a FDD critical alarm, I'm gonna tell you what's occurring, and here's are the things that are common causes of that particular instance, right? So I'm seeing this, and so therefore it looks to me like, you could have a loose electrical connection, or you can have, a valve actuator is loose or stuck closed, right? A trip circuit breaker, those type of things. There's also maintenance alarms, right? There's comfort alarms, even energy alarms. So embedded in the system, we have, it's a wealth. I think the manual actually for this is like 86 pages or something with all the various alarms associated with the system. But you can have this embedded in your system to do these type of things, give you reports, give you alarms, and show you and make recommendations at the same time. Very powerful part of the platform, right? Something else that we've just released is our auto commissioning Accelerate. I don't have a way to demonstrate that to you right now because it's just released, but just a shout out to it. What that is it's a native, it gives your system the native ability to do commissioning routines. Right now it's VAV boxes only, right? But you're using web control, you're using logic down in the controller, and it's running commissioning routines automatically and then generating CSV report files, those type of things, right? Excel report files. And then you can do that systematically throughout the building throughout the year, so you can do some performance commissioning type of things, right? So that's something we've just released. Finally, something I will mention, you do have the ability to schedule reports and do those type of things here in the system. You can email them in a timely fashion. You do have that capability as well. So I think I've covered a lot of the points. I'd like to take this time to field questions. Generally, when we have this many people, I'd just like to note that we typically get more questions than we can answer in our time slot. We'll try to give it as much time. If we can't get to all the questions, we will do our best to come back with written answers to the group at a later date, within a week or two by the time we process and get it through our system.
Okay, so yes, we do have quite a few questions in the queue. And Rocky, I just wanted to let you know that Mike Wilson has been fielding some of the questions as we've gone along during the presentation.
Great.
But I do want to go ahead and ask these questions aloud because others may have the same questions as well.
Well, perfect. Do we already have the answers as written out by Mike? Because if we do, maybe you can just read his answer. I'm happy to answer, but if he's already answered, it might be pertinent. Thank you.
Absolutely. No problem. So our first question, can ALC integrate directly into generators, or are additional sensors required? And the answer is it depends on the generator. Most generators seek Modbus or BACnet. So in those instances, integration is quite simple. It is a fully analog, which is an older generator, then sensors are needed. Did you need to add to that?
Nope, please just go ahead. That was a perfect answer.
Okay, great. Can building performance metrics be tailored to indoor air quality instead of energy consumption, such as air changes per hour, relative humidity, etc.? And Mike's answer was yes, since the key component of comfort is temperature. The environmental index tool starts with assigning point values based on the difference between zone temperature and heating and cooling set points. And then other factors, such as humidity and CO2 levels, VOC levels, can also be computed into the numeric system to reflect one comfort or the indoor air quality score for all factors. So this is a powerful tool for facility managers who need to identify buildings with performance problems or ensure buildings don't become less efficient as changes are made.
Beautiful.
Okay, So here is one question I believe I don't have an answer for, but let me just ask you this.
Mhm.
Can you provide a perspective of what you have shown, such as features, that is included in your standard baseline software hardware package? So in other words, lots of features, but these cost money as if they are add-ons. Can you provide the percentage dollar increase of added features and what is really included in a standard package?
Got it. Okay. So with web control, I would tell you right now, the majority of what you saw today is included in the standard package. When we talk about add-ons, we do have a couple of add-ons, and we're talking about as a percent of price point, 15%, 25%. We do have some other ones that are actually a multiple factor to web control, like when we do things like LDAP, where we have these more complex systems for single sign-on, those type of things. But everything that you saw here today that I showed was pretty much native in the system. So when I say pretty much, there's a couple things in advanced security that we do, and we're talking again 15, 20% of the cost of web control to put that add-on in. There's some with advanced reporting, it's native in our web control premium package, which is the system that we have the most installs of, and it does unlimited points. We do have another one that does 500 points and another one that does 200 points, but we tend to be, most people tend to do the unlimited variant. So that's native in the system. And then there is advanced alarming. So when you want to do some of these critical alarm stuff with FDD, those type of things, again, a percentage of web control, you're talking about 15, 20%. And we're talking low price point. I mean, quite frankly, I can't get into pricing those type of things, and I won't. But when you look at web control as an overall far-reaching system with our controllers, it is competitively relatively inexpensive.
Wonderful, thank you. Can you provide some screenshots of the various building performance dashboards?
So in this system, unfortunately, the only thing that I really could show you here are the ones that I was showing, which were just the various dashboards. We only have one environmental index performance dashboard. So that's as far as I can go right now in the system. But we probably could get a few chimed up or something and maybe email them to that particular person. Lined up, I should say, not chimed up.
Okay. Let's see. The question is, I don't see Windows Server 2019 listed as a supported operating system at this time. The answer is the current version of Web Control, version 7, was released before Windows Server 2019. So the next rev of Web Control will support that operating system.
That is correct. And that's coming, it's in the pipe, it's in development, maybe even moving towards our first rev of testing. So the next rev of Web Control is on its way.
Great. Okay, next question. In regards to the weather data plugin, are you only able to pull data from AccuWeather, or is the data source customizable? And Mike wrote, data sources are customizable. However, ALC supports the subscription cost of AccuWeather for free.
Right. Another thing to add in that is a lot of these weather services do XML feeds. And so it just depends on, if their feed is free or not, and if you want to support the cost, those type of things.
Okay, wonderful. So let's see, next question is outside air forecast available for Brazil? And I don't have an answer.
I don't see why not, right? I don't see why it wouldn't be, you would be able to grab that from Brazil, because most of those weather stations are grabbing that data from local airport weather stations. So that's how they're doing it. They have different satellites, different radar, there's different stations that they go to grab the data. So if you have the ability to get that data from like an AccuWeather or something like that, you absolutely can. You also can do obviously outdoor sensors and other type of things locally, which we see often, right, where we're getting temperature readings, wind readings, humidity readings, which are the same thing basically, just without predictive indexing. So that's doable as well, just to get readily readable data.
Great, thank you. So next question is the floor plan zone pop-up a Web Control 7 feature? And actually that was added back in Web Control version 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How can I make sure trend data is being saved for historical data? So the answer is if you can see the trend, it is being stored actually forever in the Web Control system, so long as you have adequate hard drive space on the Web Control server.
Yeah, that's right, and that's one of the things that makes the platform so powerful, right? If I just add a little commentary here, is that you're again only limited by the size of the server, quite frankly.
Okay, great. Next question, are there plans for a smartphone app to access the Web Control system? And that actually already exists now, and it was released in the Web Control 6.5 version.
Right, and let me just speak to that just a little bit too. You know, as far as apps go, right? Apps are obviously an important part of our everyday lives, and we utilize them and those type of things. But also with this type of system, it's a browser agnostic system, which means you can grab your phone or grab your smart tablet and web into this as it is, as you see it today. And as you know, the graphical capabilities and things expand, you're still going to be able to access the system directly through a standard web browser, right? And that includes your smart devices.
Okay, great. So next question, where does the dealer or the branch get their controller graphics? So they get the floor plans made at our factory graphics department here in Kennesaw, Georgia. Many of our dealers also make their own graphics. Equipment graphics are actually a part of the system, which is included in the library that we provide to our dealers.
Yep. And then in certain instances, when custom graphics are required or requested, our graphics department also fields those and develops graphics specifically for our dealer network.
Okay, great. Let's see, does Web Control have API available for other systems to integrate with ALC? And it says we do have an API. We provide it directly to our dealers and certain organizations.
Yep, that's correct. And so the other answer is contact your local dealer. If you have an instance where you're looking for a specific type of integration, and then between them, whether we need the API, whether or not we already have a driver, or whether or not Automated Logic is going to look at developing that specifically, we'll work all that out as a team.
Okay, great. Let's see. How do we get these new features added to our existing systems, and are there limitations?
Okay.
It sounds like they need to reach out to maybe their dealer or branch.
Yeah, I think that's the most appropriate thing. And the reason I'm going to just expound on that a bit is because really it just depends on the system, what variant you have, those type of things, how much cost you're willing to absorb as associated with that. Because understand that if you have an existing ALC system and you have older graphics or other features that aren't there and you want those features, yes, we can do an upgrade. But then also, if you want updated graphics, they're going to have to come back and a technician's going to have to come in and install those graphics. There's some programming and things that need to be done on the back end to get those things in there, right? So that's a technician's time and there's costs associated. So really definitely contact your dealer.
Great, thank you. What type of controls offerings are available for cruises? And it sounds like cruise ships are pretty much like just a regular building.
Yeah, pretty much, quite frankly. And in fact, oftentimes as part of our, our parent company obviously is Carrier Corporation, they install a lot of various systems in these ships, chilled water systems, those type of things, and our controllers are smacked on along with those. So that's the type of controls that are going in there. They're the same ones that are going in buildings, quite frankly.
Okay, thank you. Does ALC have standard FDD rules, or can those be customized at site?
They are standard embedded FDD rules in the logic.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. How are upgrades to the web control system distributed? Is there a subscription or upgrade?
Oh, that's a good question. So, the way they're distributed is when we come out with a new variant, and we're talking, we're not releasing new variants of web control, every 6 months or something. It's more like on a cycle of closer, maybe year, 18 months, those type of things. But the way they're distributed is we put the information out in various formats to our dealer network, on social media, general press releases, those type of things. And then our dealers are able to download those upgrades, download those files, and then can implement them into a system locally, right? But it's a very important, we rely on our distribution network to communicate directly with the majority of their customers as to the value of the upgrade, those type of things, the cost, because they have labor involved, overhead, all of those things. So that's really how it's distributed. There is obviously various talk about other ways of doing this in the future, but I won't get into that. But I think people can think of what that looks like if they use their brains.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. What is the app available for the iPhone?
I don't, and Mike might be able to answer this, but I don't think right now there is an app available for the iPhone specifically for web control.
Right. So I'll expound upon that. This is Mike Wilson. I'm the product marketing manager. So Web Control 6.0 and beyond, it became multi-browser compliant and works well with mobile devices right in their browser. So in an iPhone, all you would do is open Web Control in Safari on your phone.
Right. Exactly.
Thank you. Let's see here. Does the system have a partitioning feature for remote facilities monitoring?
So the answer to that is yes. And I just want to be careful because I don't want to, when we say partitioning, I don't want people of a technical mind to think partitioning drives, right? Or separating things out in that particular like segmenting a hard drive or something. So yes, that is the answer. We have a number of ways of doing it. We have ways of doing it from a single remote or a single server. So you can do remote access and give people access in specific ways so that they can only see certain parts of their building or only see certain buildings in that server. We also have another way of doing it hierarchically, where you can have multiple web control servers in various facilities so that people have local access only to that facility, but then they're all kind of summed up and totalized so that someone can move about as a super user from facility to facility to facility.
Great, thank you. Let's see, next question. Have you ever used occupancy sensors to dial in the actual amount of airflow needed? Mike did answer yes, and people counting things like Cisco Halo that counts the number of cellular phones in an area as a proxy for people.
Right, yeah, and in fact, if someone has more specific questions around that, I would recommend reaching out to their local dealer. They'll get in touch with us, and what we'll do is we can put together a brief presentation or a long presentation, whatever they want, around like the Center for Intelligent Buildings, as there are a lot of things we're doing there from an occupancy standpoint in various formats, from an integration standpoint, that we can speak to that are actually being used in everyday life in an office complex.
Okay, let's see. Does Web Control have capabilities for BIM integration?
For BIM integration right now, we are not integrating to that building information management system, right? Right now we're using the graphics side for what we have for development. But so I guess the short answer is no, we're not integrating to BIM.
Okay, great. Let's see. Is the fault detection mode available in all versions? And if no, what is the minimal version and above? And it looks like the Web Control version 6.0 and newer are capable of fault detection and diagnostics.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and I think it's important to mention here, because some people on the line have web control systems. You know, our systems are very versatile, and we have older systems, you know, even back like the 4.0s and things that are running right now, right? But it's important to mention that from a technical support standpoint and from an update standpoint, right? When we do cumulative patches, those type of things to our systems, it's important for people to remember that 6.5 and 7.0, which are the two most current variants, those are the ones that we're writing patches for. Those are the ones that if there are any fixes that need to be done, that we're doing and that we're supporting technically when there is a bug or an issue that we find. So just remember that. As it's heavily related to this question, so I thought I'd mention it.
Okay. All right. Well, it is 12:05, and we still have quite a few questions to go, but we want to be cognizant of everyone's time today. So we can always follow up later after the webinar with some Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just like to thank everybody for their time. I highly encourage you to go to automatedlogic.com, search for your local dealer if you don't have one already. If you're looking to upgrade your system, retrofit your system, just want someone to come and look at your system and talk to you about Automated Logic. They are available. Feel free to look on LinkedIn for me or find my contact information. I could be reached at rocky.moore@carrier.com. I'm happy to field some questions if you have them, or point you in the right direction to any of our integrators.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we want to thank everyone for joining us today. This does conclude our webinar, and we hope you have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.